So I'll just start from the beginning in case anyone missed something. I was just gonna welcome everyone to this wonderful panel discussion that we have today. And today we're gonna hear about perspectives on CMIP, about IPCC and the CMIP initiative. And we're also gonna hear about how ECRs, all of us who have gathered here today, can play a bigger role in these initiatives going forward in our careers, and also talk about other things like tackling climate change as climate scientists ourselves, and about communication, advocacy, and other things. And we have four amazing panelists, and I'd like to first start by introducing myself. I'm the moderator for today, Aditya. I'm a PhD student from the University of Melbourne, and I work primarily in physical climate science. And I have an amazing co-moderator and co-chair for today's panel, Anna. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Aditya. So my name is Anna. I'm also at the University of Melbourne, also working primarily in physical climate sciences, PhD student. I think that's kind of everything from me. So why don't I hand over to our panelists, and they're going to introduce themselves. So if we could just go from maybe left to right with the images. So Camille, if you'd like to start off by introducing yourself.
I definitely can. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and lovely to meet you all online. So I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Sydney, and my research is very interdisciplinary, exploring how we can expand loss and damage estimates by accounting for indirect impacts caused by extreme events attributed to climate change. It's pretty interdisciplinary, so unlike Aditya or Anna, I can't say that I'm just in climate science. But I'm very lucky because I get to work with a lot of experts across all of these disciplines. And fun fact, before my PhD, for the ECRs out there, I actually worked in industry as a project manager in California. And that was actually a fantastic experience to hone a lot of the soft skills, including project management, which have been absolutely essential to my PhD. That's a brief snapshot on who I am, and I'll pass it over to Michael.
Thanks, Camille, and nice to meet everyone, at least online. So my name is Michael Grose. I work at a research organisation in Australia called CSIRO, or CSIRO, you can choose how you say it. I've been here for a while. Before that, I worked at a university and a research centre, and I used to work in kind of Antarctic research and so on. But these days I work mainly kind of not in the field, but in the office, and I work on regional climate projections and producing usable information for then decision makers in terms of likely regional climate change into the future under different scenarios. Relevant to this panel, I was lucky enough to act as a lead author on the IPCC 6th assessment report in the Atlas chapter, an interactive Atlas tool, and be a contributing author to a couple of other chapters, which was a great experience. And I was also recently able to contribute at least a little bit to a CMIP task team planning towards CMIP 7, led or coordinated expertly by Eleanor, who's hosting us here today. And I will try and think of some useful career advice, but I'm very aware that I've had a specific kind of experience, and some of this generalizes, some of it doesn't. I'm also a bit old now, so maybe times are different now than they were when I was looking for my last job, but I'll try and think of some useful and interesting things to say about that as well. So nice to meet you.
Well, thanks, Michael. Roxy here. Hi guys, it's a pleasure to meet you all and talk to you. I'm on vacation, but it's yeah, but it's quite an important topic, and it's always delightful to connect with early careers and the larger community. So I work as a climate scientist at the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, which is in Pune in India. Pune is 2 hours drive from Mumbai, where Subimal is, and I've been working, and this institution is under the Ministry of Earth Sciences of India. I've been working on climate sciences in large and climate change, particularly focusing on tropical climate variability and change. An emphasis of my research is the role of oceans, ocean on the climate system, climate change, what impacts that we see over land in terms of extreme weather events and long-term changes and so on. And I have been trying to work interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary as well, connecting the ocean to atmosphere to land and the biosphere as well. Biosphere, both over the ocean, both in the ocean as in ocean biogeochemistry, but also over the land as in vegetation and feedback and so on. And one recent theme that I've been working on is health, human health. Yeah, so I love to work transdisciplinary. And relevant to this panel discussion, I've been on the special report of IPCC as a lead author for the special report on oceans and cryosphere in a changing climate, what we call the SROCC report. And as a contributing author and reviewer for the AR6, recent AR6 sixth assessment report. I've been working with the World Climate Research Program, WCRP, and CLIWAR, where we connect strongly with the early careers and so on. So we will talk about all this soon enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Roxy, and thanks, Aditya and team for inviting me. It's really an honor and pleasure to be here and interacting with an excellent panel. I'm Subimal Ghosh. I'm from Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. It is an academic institute, and I am here working as a professor since for the last 17 years after completing my PhD, and I work mostly in the area of weather, climate, and water. So my major work is around water, which is being the rainfall, being the way human use water, being the way water resource availability, being it hydrology, and sometimes it's also related to water and carbon cycle. So these are my areas in which I work. My major focus of work over the last few years was on land atmospheric feedback, where we are trying to understand that what sort of feedback land gives to atmosphere in terms of recycled precipitation, in terms of the interactions between the vegetation and the atmosphere, and how does it affect the carbon cycle, specifically the terrestrial vegetation. So these are some of the areas in which I am working. And at the same time, I also work in the area of designing early warning system, where we can use some of the advanced data sciences for developing decision support system specific to sectors. For example, sectors related to agriculture, sectors related to disaster mitigation, urban flooding, and so on and so forth. And yes, I was fortunate to be the lead author of IPCC Assessment Report 6, Chapter 11, Working Group 1. And that was a lovely experience, a great learning experience to learn a lot of things. Yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for introducing yourselves. We can see that there's a lot of experience between the four of you, and it's exciting to hear how all of your different sort of backgrounds will influence our discussion today. So before jumping in, I just wanted to remind everyone who's attending that we do have the Padlet available if you have specific questions, either for specific panel members or more broadly. So we'll be keeping track of that. And so with that, we'll jump in. So first of all, we wanted to discuss more broadly pathways into assessment. So the first question for our panelists are, what is the process to become an IPCC contributor, and what are the different types of contributors?
Maybe Michael, would you like to?
Me first, did you say?
Yeah. Would you like
Okay. Yeah, so to become a member of the IPCC panel and the very high up positions is a different ballgame, but to contribute to a report or an assessment report or a special report, there's different kind of roles. There's the coordinating lead authors and contributing authors, and then there's also aspects of get the name wrong, technical support, and so on as well. So being a lead author means you're one of a group of 20 or 30 or so people selected to be from around the world to be representative on a topic, and you contribute your time. You usually go and attend meetings internationally and get together. I didn't get to attend a single meeting because I joined late and then COVID hit, and so I only got to attend meetings late at night on Zoom, which was still great, but not quite as good as traveling around the world. To become a coordinating lead author or lead author, you need to put your hand up to be nominated, and then your country puts together a list of people to be nominated and put forward to become those authors. The process for AR7, the 7th assessment report, is kind of going on now, and I think nominations are closing or closed for those roles. So that's I think perhaps not an opportunity for open now, I think, but there will be special reports and other reports that you can nominate to become a lead author, and then a coordinating lead author, perhaps. The other role there is contributing author, and this is a little bit more flexible. So people who have got a particular analysis or a particular set of work or work that is going to be useful and valuable to a chapter, the lead authors and coordinating lead authors kind of call on contributing authors to contribute a piece of work, or to expand upon something they've done to be added into the chapter, and that's a little bit more flexible. So I guess a suggestion about becoming involved is go to meetings like this, go to kind of seminars and so on, but then also see what other ways you could become a contributing author to an assessment report by working with people who have been selected to be a lead author, coordinating lead author, and if that can be something that they could contribute as well. But I'm relatively less experienced with IPCC report. As I said, I kind of joined late. I think I was the last person on AR6 to possibly join the report, and I didn't actually go to any international meetings. So, but I still had a great experience because the team of the 2 coordinating lead authors and lead authors in the chapter, we still email each other like pretty often when something comes up. We just like really got to know each other even by Zoom, and the coordinating lead authors were really generous with their time and attention and their kind of attitude. So it was a really great experience and especially to meet people from different nations and different continents, how they're approaching the same kinds of issues and how they apply it in different ways towards the goal of understanding regional climate change. So yeah, maybe hand it over to someone else now.
Yeah, maybe I'll pick it from there. Michael, a wonderful explanation of the role of different authors in IPCC. So for early careers, what I would say is the most important is to focus on relevant research that will take you through this pathway, and then connect with global organizations, for example, World Climate Research Program. I'm giving example of WCRP because WCRP is that organization that started that initiative for facilitating IPCC itself, IPCC reports itself, and also many other activities. In my case, also these organizations played a large role. For example, if you want to be nominated as an author, whether it's a lead author, coordinating lead author, and so on for IPCC, there are two ways. One is through national hubs. The other is through international or regional organizations, which IPCC identifies for nominations. Yeah, and many times the national hubs may not be accessible from many countries. Yeah, and there are a lot of politics involved, as you may know. And this was so I am speaking from my own experience. It could be quite difficult for many people to get nominated, unless you are very senior and you have strong hold in that national arena. For some countries, yeah. So for some countries it could be very fair as well. Yeah. So I'm keeping the options open here, and in my case, I would say I had. From early on, I had published, for example, I've been working on ocean extremes, oceanic changes, and so on. And I was well connected with international organizations like this. Either you can be with the CMIP organization, with the CLIVAR. Yes, is a wonderful organization for early careers. So there are many early career organizations as well, WCRP, CLIVAR, and so on. And there, that's the vista for you to showcase your research that is relevant for the community and IPCC and so on. So then people will understand, okay, you are working on this and this kind of research, and it will be easier for you to get nominated. Yeah, and there also I have it's not just coordinating lead authors and lead authors, but there are also, like Michael said, you can apply to be a part of the TSU, because TSU need many staff who have technical capacities. Then many chapters of IPCC reports need chapter scientists. Yeah, so each chapter deals with it differently. Sometimes the chapter lead authors themselves pick the chapter scientist, but generally a chapter scientist means early career researcher, usually who is skilled in analytics and preparing charts, or capable to put together some of the sections together, and can help the senior chapters lead authors. Yeah, so watch out for these opportunities that will come up even after the lead authors have been declared, nominations is over. So for example, AR7 nominations are over. That's what I understand. But still, you might get an opportunity to be a chapter scientist, especially early career. So keep connection with these large organizations, potential lead authors, and so on, and show how your research is relevant for them. So I would say that is very important. Yeah, thank you. Over to Subimal.
Thanks, Roxy, and thanks, Michael. Actually, I've covered everything. So one of the things I'd like to highlight is that, being an IPCC lead author, coordinating lead author, or contributing author, or chapter scientist, anything. If you're associated with IPCC writing process, that's a great learning experience, because in IPCC reports, we do not really produce new science, but what we do is that we do a very good review of literature, recent literature, and based on that we make an assessment. And this is a great learning experience in the sense, like, we start looking from different angle, or probably if there is a problem, or if there is a science question, or if there is a specific questions which needs assessment, we look at it from different angle. Probably your angle may not be acceptable to others, so the other's opinion will come, and you have to assess then, and you have to then come up with a proper assessment with high confidence, low confidence, medium confidence. There are different terminologies, and that, this is the process which will help you to be, which will help you to understand the whole process, the opinion of different scientists, different scientific community about some of the processes which is happening, and at the same time to become very open to different scientific opinion, which is very important. Like, we all have our own opinion, but when we contribute to IPCC chapters, we become very open. We start accepting each other's opinion, discuss, and then come up with an assessment. And that's the beauty of IPCC report, chapter writing or report writing. Thanks.
Can I just kind of support what was just said there by Subimal? Like, the process of doing an assessment differently than writing a research paper is a really interesting process and different. And I think even if you don't get a chance to be an author soon, I think learning from that process and learning some of the tools that are used can help you in your career anyway. So for example, assessing confidence, there's actually techniques to do that, and rating systems for doing that. That can be a really useful thing to apply in your own research. Is how do I think about confidence in my research finding, and what are the lines of evidence that support it, and what's the agreement between those lines of evidence? Just kind of learning those kind of concepts is really useful. Even if you don't end up being an author on a report, I think that there's lots of stuff to learn that's really useful. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of this advice. This is incredibly useful. But now I wanted to ask Camille specifically a question, because I guess we've heard that as ECRs, we can either sort of join organizations or try and network with potential lead authors. But Camille, whether in an IPCC perspective or outside of that, how do you seek out collaborative career opportunities, and do you think there are like ample resources out there for ECRs? So what's your experience and perspective?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and hopefully one day I'll be able to contribute my perspective on being an IPCC author. But the first question about how do I go about creating collaborative research opportunities, I personally would say it comes down to confidence in yourself, in reaching out to someone you admire. For example, I have been following this fantastic researcher, Rupert, at Oxford University, and he really inspired my first research paper and actually got me kicked off into my PhD because of that paper. And I just one day said, you know what, I'm just going to send him a LinkedIn message, just be polite, say I'm interested in your work, would love to have a chat. And things went from there. And now he's a co-author, and it's been a wonderful collaborative experience. And actually, I'm calling you guys from the United States. I was just in Germany working with collaborators on a PhD project. Again, I really just found scientists and researchers who were doing work that I was really interested in and building on, and took a leap of faith to email them. So I think this just goes to say that soft skills, as I mentioned in my introduction, are really important. Just having confidence in yourself that the worst that can be said is a no when you reach out to someone for collaboration. But generally, my experience has been that people in the climate space especially are very open to ECRs reaching out to them. So definitely do that. And regarding ample resources, I haven't received personally any support in doing that. I've really just taken it in my own stead to reach out. But of course, PhD students out there, your supervisors are great resources, and also, yeah, family, friends, and other students as well. I hope that answers the question thoroughly enough.
Yeah, I will add on to what Camille said, especially when you're working on something transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary, like what Camille does. You cannot do all the science by yourself. Yeah, that's quite important to understand early on when you are an early career researcher yourself, and especially at today's, with today's advancements both in science and technology. There is so much of advanced technology, data, and methods to approach different aspects of science. So you might be an expert in something, but there are other people out there who can improve the research that you are doing by supplementing or complementing it with the techniques that they use or the resources that they have. So this is something I have been working on. Collaboration has been the key for my research. If you look at my research papers, a perfect example is when I work with Subimal Ghosh here. So for example, Subimal's team is perfectly good in some techniques, some modeling techniques and so on, while our group has high performance computing resources or global model or some data with the Met Department and so on. So it's all it all comes out to be mutually beneficial, and also you are connecting with the larger community out there, which finally showcases your research. Also, the reach of your research also will be much better. And especially if you are planning to publish in high impact research papers, this is quite important because it will make sure that there are multiple eyes that go through your research, your methods, your results, and so on. And if there is some way for improving that, this kind of collaboration can help definitely. And ultimately, it will be, it all can steer you to, the research that is referred in IPCC reports, or you get to write or contribute to IPCC reports as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for those wonderful comments. We'll quickly take a question from the audience. I believe Akash has a question. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask it right now. Or if you're facing issues, you could also pop in the question on the Padlet or here in the chat, and we can ask it for you. Maybe they're facing some issues with their yeah.
No, I see. They've put in the
Oh, yeah.
chat. So other than the academia, is there any role for climate NGOs in IPCC reports other than the field of academia? They might be more close to the public, potentially.
I guess anyone can take the question if they're
Yeah, so I guess, like, can you come into IPCC reports from a pathway that isn't through academia or indirectly?
I think, yeah, I think I mean, climate NGOs play a much bigger, I mean, they play a big role. In the sense, like, the first thing is, when you are writing any report, we always say that, of course, we'll go by peer-reviewed publications, but at the same time, we'll also look at the reports. And many of the reports can be, generated by the NGOs, because when we do assessment, we review the reports properly, and then only we make an assessment, and then only we'll include it in the report. So if some good reports are available by any of the NGOs, which really adds value to the assessment, then of course they are welcome and they are being considered. That I know it very well from my experience. That's number one. Number two is, yes, the NGOs really play a major role, and I know that many of the climate organization, climate scientists, academicians, they work closely with NGOs. For example, I know Roxy has been working very closely with many NGOs. I also did some work with some of the NGOs for early warning system design and so on. So many of us actually work with NGOs, and we co-develop models, we co-develop we write papers together and so on. So in that way, their contributions are well recognized and they are being considered. So I think, yeah, and I agree that they are very close to public, so that, I mean, sometimes the stakeholders have more trust on the NGOs rather than on us. So, and that's the best way. NGOs are the best way to really connect to the public or common people. So, and also communicate science to people. So yes, they play a major role.
And I will add on to that. The reports or that come out from NGOs and other organizations might be considered as gray literature, but IPCC gives importance to this gray literature also because they are very helpful in filling those knowledge gaps which many times scientific literature do not provide, especially how climate change is impacting local communities and how they are working to adapt and mitigate to it and so forth, or renewable energy technologies and similar things from the private sector. So we need all this kind of information, but there is the systematic procedure on identifying and citing this kind of gray literature and including this inputs as sources as well. Yeah, just to add to that. Thank you.
The only thing I can think of to add from that side of things is I have some experience with working in the Pacific, and so some islands in the Pacific, and their NGOs such as SPREP and SPC and others help coordinate effort in terms of research, but also on the ground aspects as well, that then feeds into things like IPCC reports through things like making sure there's representation in the small islands chapters and sections, and also there's a greater focus than ever in AR7 on Indigenous knowledge, so gathering and learning from traditional knowledge as well as other sources, and also they do things like organize a set of workshops where they got researchers in the area and lined up collaborations so that they can write literature, so that then it's in the literature to then be cited in things like IPCC reports. So it's a really important role, I think, for NGOs and regional-based organizations to lift the profile of the research, and also get it into things like assessment reports.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Akash, for that question. And I encourage others to put their questions on as well on Padlet, because it's not quite often we get such a wonderful panel to talk about these amazing things. I guess I'd like to shift gears a little bit and take the conversation towards communicating our science, because one of the major roles about CMIP and IPCC is, at the end of the day, to take our science, complicated science, and put that forward as assessments for policymaking and for the general public as well. And Michael, you talked a little bit about the Atlas as a tool for communicating climate science. What was your experience in that? And as an open question to everyone on the panel, what are some ways or tools you find are great for communicating science, or some ways in which you communicate science in your daily lives as scientists? And what do you think is the role of scientists in doing that, and climate scientists particularly?
Did you want me to talk first about the Atlas and my
perhaps,
thoughts? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think in the sixth assessment report process, it was recognised that a big thick book is great, but the modern world is a lot online, and so an interactive tool where you can explore some key findings and then also explore some key data sets in an interactive way is kind of really needed. So I think it was a great decision, and there was a great technical team put it together, but with input from the chapter as well about how it was presented and the functionality of the IPCC Interactive Atlas. And if you haven't used it, check it out. I think there's some great stuff in there. And I think talking about communication in general, I think it's talking about interdisciplinary as well aspects. I think effectiveness of communications and creating messages that are appropriate, that get taken up and not misinterpreted. It's great to listen to experts in that area. So there's a lot of great social science about how we communicate, how we assess and understand risk, and how we interpret information and interpret visual information as well as text information. Some of that goes on in IPCC assessment reports. There's got experts, doing the visual style and so on. But it's even much more broad than that. So earlier today, we were running a webinar about a very hot topic in climate science, which is what's the chances of we hit so-called tipping points in the climate system, and we see, and I gave a talk, and then we had a talk from someone who comes from a psychology background, talking about how we understand risk and how we kind of understand, incomplete or uncertain information and how we interpret and that kind of thing. And it was a really great conversation and presentation, because there's the facts as we know them. We know there's a lot of uncertainty, and then well, how do people interpret that, and what do they do with it? Is then the natural next question, and that needs different disciplines and different skills to come together. And so I think when we're thinking transdisciplinarily, we're not just thinking about physicists talking to chemistry and biology, but let's think about what we're doing in terms of what we're putting out there in terms of messaging and communication as well, because there's rigor there too.
Thanks. Maybe we'll take it to Camille if you have any thoughts or opinions on sort of communicating climate science, or platforms that you use.
Yeah, sure. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I've been very lucky to have worked in industry beforehand, which majorly helped my ability to communicate even just more, I guess, industry-related work. Science is a bit of a different beast, but I certainly have turned to YouTube videos, like Michael says, different literature, I suppose, on how to communicate science. And in terms of visual communication as well, I think this is a really important area to hone as a scientist, because often people really just look at figures. And again, to the point Michael made, it's very important that we're I guess, not miscommunicating something as well. And then the earlier points that Roxy and I were talking about, if you have different collaborators and people working with you, it's often these different voices and expertise that can pick up on things that you hadn't thought of in your, I guess, our discipline. So I guess those would be my recommendations. Again, really, seek or be curious, learn about different approaches out there to communicate your science, and focus on visuals too, I think is what I would say.
Yeah, and if I may add, it's important to understand what IPCC actually provides. So earlier on, there were criticisms on, IPCC reports are not accessible and so on. But it has changed in a large way during the last decade, I would say. If you read the several pages of IPCC reports, they are very quite simplified. Even people with some scientific inclination can still understand. Yeah, and the add-ons like Atlas and all provides a lot of information. But at the same time, we need to understand that most IPCC reports may not be providing information that is relevant at local scales, which people and policymakers many times need. And this is where, whether it's IPCC lead author or as a scientist who has access to the IPCC report can help in communicating. They can try to see pathways on how to translate that information that is relevant for local policy action. Do you need to generate national climate change reports that connects with this framework? Okay, we have understood on a global scale or a large regional scale. For Africa, this is the case. So how for Kenya or Nigeria or for another country, East African nation or India, how would you approach? What are the points that you can take from the global report? How is it relevant for you, and what other kind of assessments do you need on a national scale? So you can go about a national climate change assessment report like what India has done, something like that recently, national climate change report in the last few years, and that's based on, I would say that is something like a spin-off from the IPCC reports. The other thing is IPCC reports are never prescriptive. That is something they keep on, the IPCC team keeps on saying, and that's something even difficult for scientists like us. Okay, we are saying this and this, but we do not tell countries or policymakers to do this and that to, on how to respond to these kind of changes. But once the reports are out and you identify, okay, your region or locality has these kind of issues, it is our, for those scientists working locally or nationally to identify the pathways on how to adapt and mitigate to them. So these kind of things, information can be communicated with the larger public to the policymakers and so on. So I think that's the first important link. And there are multiple ways on to communicate to everyone, from policy brief to social media to newspapers to radio, and I think it has been going very well in the last few years. Yeah, but just that I would say many times when we are, so there is a climate anxiety part where if all the time these negative impacts from the climate change reports are only highlighted, then that will keep people away from acting positively in terms of climate adaptation or mitigation. Whenever we are giving those inputs, insights from the reports, it's also important to add on how we work about it, how we go about it. Are there examples? So IPCC reports also contain best practices from different regions on how different communities, different nations have responded to this kind of impact. So it is important to include these best practices and examples on how we can move on as well. Yeah.
Thanks. Just to add that IPCC also comes up with a summary for policymaker. So of course there is a big report with a lot of chapters and so on, but in a very simple language, there is a summary for policymaker. And those who do not have time to really go through this big report and find out what exactly is relevant for their work or for their areas, they can just go through the summary for policymakers in a very simple language, things are being conveyed. So that's also something which is really nice, which is really nicely done by IPCC. So that's something I'd like to mention.
I've got one extra quick thing to say, following up on something Roxy said, if that's okay. So, I mean, communication of research findings is one thing, and then I guess, you know, people may feel like they want to, or they're called to kind of advocate for particular policies or policy responses to that information. I guess, first and foremost, like, you need to be kind of understand who you're representing and what role you're playing and what your organization supports. So for example, where I work, we've got a policy of, we can talk about the phrase, I think Subimal was saying, or someone was saying, you know, policy relevant but not policy prescriptive. We don't tell policymakers what to do, but we give them information that's relevant for them to make policy. If we want to do an advocacy role of a particular policy that goes beyond that, then we have to then say, I'm just talking as a private individual. I'm not representing my workplace. But from within that, that still gives you a lot of scope to give a lot of a lot of information and a lot of suggestions and so on as well. I think, you know, even when you're doing whatever you're doing, it's just good to be clear about what is research, what is the kind of what is advocacy, and what you're drawing on to give each of those. And I think it's fine to have a stance on something. Everyone has a stance, and you can't pretend you don't. But it's good to just be clear about what your research is saying and what your opinion is or your stance on a particular policy should be. And so it takes a little bit of nuance to navigate it, but it's all doable. It's just good to kind of be aware of those roles when you're doing communication.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those amazing answers. Certainly, there's a lot of scope for communication and to put your opinions forward for young career researchers, and these are great things to talk about. And thanks, Michael, for that wonderful segue to a different topic that we can go into, like talking about, you know, academia versus non-academic research, and a lot of ECRs sort of sometimes face issues in academia, like working as PhD students or in short-term contracts as postdocs. It can often be challenging to take on big projects or doing lots of collaborative research. So maybe we can start with Camille. Do you as an academic researcher and an early career researcher, do you face certain specific challenges in taking up like big projects or collaborative tasks, considering you are an interdisciplinary researcher? And what are the potential prospects versus challenges you see going forward in your career at the moment?
Great question, something I can definitely speak to, as this is what my whole thesis is about, and this collaboration I have with PIC researchers as well. I would say that it is, for a PhD student in the current, at least I'm speaking from Australia here, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Australia it's quite risky to take on interdisciplinary research with people outside your research connections and network. For example, collaborators.
So? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
The collaborators that I'm working with do not have any connections to my current PhD supervisors. So when you hand off a piece of your project to someone else, you are trusting them on, you know, their timeline. As Roxy mentioned, I'm not an expert in impact attribution, which is what my collaborators are working on, and that tends to be a bit challenging in a 3.5-year PhD. So it's definitely something that I'm very wary about, but fortunately we have flexibility in Australia, at least, to define what track or kind of PhD you want to do by publication or monograph, kind of more toward the end. So for me, it was a worthwhile risk to take, because I think the climate challenge that we are facing is such an interdisciplinary one. And if you really do want to tackle some of the largest challenges, getting experience early with collaborating with different people from different backgrounds, leading a project in and of itself that's beyond just you and your PhD supervisors is super valuable. I think that was the main question, right, Aditya? Okay. That would be what I would say, but I would say do it. If you're an ECR, definitely take the opportunity to make the most of that and just work with your supervisors to understand the risks and how you'll mitigate them moving, to make sure you get your thesis.
Roxy, it sounded like you were surprised by something.
Yeah, well, if you're a PhD student, definitely, I think it is many times based on advisor. So how your advisor sees it. So I can see that same insecurity within India as well. So, but there are many advisors who are quite open that they encourage. So I would advise advisors to be, to provide that freedom for their students to collaborate and seek out advice from anyone else as well. Yeah, I think that's important and part of growing as an independent scientist, and that's what you want to generate as a PhD student from your lab. So if it is happening in Australia, if it is happening in India or elsewhere, I think that's a wrong way of PhD advising. But at the same time, of course, you need to be careful that your ideas and techniques are not stolen away. I mean, but it's possible to keep that balance and seek out collaborations. Yeah, that's what I would say. At the same time, I would say one point for early careers would be, if you have published some research or if you have made some code or techniques for your research and already published about it, you should put that code or research in public domain. For example, like GitHub, you can put your products and code there, which is accessible to a larger community, and that's how you make an outreach for your research, which is then used by the community, and then you are out in the community. That's one way of collaborating as well, instead of seeking one single individual collaborations here and there. Yeah, people will find out you. People working in your area will find you out based on your products in GitHub and other public domain. It can be a data as well. There are many data servers there. So these are also wonderful arenas for collaborating, where people will find you out and then start the collaboration. So maybe you are a PhD student and you won't be able to, but when you're a postdoc, you can revive these connections and bring it out on collaborations. Yeah.
Thanks so
just
much.
to quickly add, Roxy, don't get me wrong, my supervisors are very supportive of me doing this type of collaborative work. It is just something with a 3.5-year PhD that is, I think any supervisor's concerned. They want their student to not be left in the dark at some point if they're requiring input to their work. So totally agree with what you were saying as well, though.
Just to follow along with some of the potential challenges of pursuing a career in academia, I wanted to just open it up and ask, what are some of the potential challenges or opportunities for ECRs if we want to pursue a career outside of academia? So maybe Michael, if you'd like to start us off.
I'll try and say something useful. I mean, I've had the job I'm in for quite a while, so I'm not really in the kind of, the hard world that all you guys are in terms of, making a career path, finding jobs and setting yourself up. So, I'm just a very lucky person with an ongoing job at a government research agency. So I recognize I'm very, very privileged in that way. But I guess, when I was working at a university, I mean, it's a tough kind of game sometimes. Like the pressure to publish lots of papers and get a big H index and all that is so real, and so it is something that and it also can change over time. The funding can go up and down in cycles, and finding ways to set yourself up for a career that kind of survives those cycles is a hard thing. But I mean, I guess thinking back to the experience, a bit out of date, but that I had is, consider different options where you can move, forward or sideways is always a smart idea. So, being a PhD student, postdoc, fast track professor is only one pathway of lots of different options. And, it is a hard road, and you have to be really lucky and fortunate in some ways to make it all the way to full professor at a university, but shoot for it for sure. But consider that, going to work at a government agency or an NGO or something else could be just as rewarding or just as a great experience as that full academic track. I don't have any kind of practical experience right this in the current environment, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I guess I also just wanted to quickly pick up on what other people were saying about during your PhD collaborating. I mean, for example, we had a workshop a year or two ago. It was about this field of extreme event attribution. Camille was contributing to it. We both participated in a discussion paper out of it. I mean, that just seems like nothing but a win-win to me. Another paper, not to be cited much, but one paper added to your record, and you get to collaborate, and you get to kind of see different disciplines and get them to come together. I mean, it sounds great. And maybe there's some old school people who say, no, stick to your discipline, just work with me, don't collaborate with people. But I think they're kind of rare these days. I'd hope they are. Yeah.
Just to add, so essentially when you are looking at academic institutions, and of course there are quite a number of students who are doing PhD, and after PhD there is some problem. At least in India, I know there is a problem of getting a job. If you're not getting a job as a professor or maybe a researcher in one of the institutions like IITM Pune, where Roxy is there, such jobs are limited. But if you don't get those jobs, then what will happen? Because still Indian industries are not really recruiting climate scientists. And I believe it is same at many places across the globe. So the question comes is that why should a student will be really interested in doing PhD in climate science if there is no job? So that's one of the major problems which many students face. So one of the things which I feel is climate is one of the area where we need a lot of people to work on, but still there is a problem with the job, and that could be solved if we start, after PhD, people start they should not be job seekers, but rather they should create jobs by startups, entrepreneurship, and so on. So this is one of the area where things are not happening very well. At least in India, I know that climate entrepreneurship has started, but it is at a very slow pace. And for climate scientists, there is not much. This is all happening in climate mitigation area, where it is in green energy or CCUS and so on and so forth. But if you're talking about climate science and then connecting science to adaptation, still there is not much. But there is a lot of opportunity because people need this information. People need the information about climate. People need the information about early warning, how it will affect their sector, how to make their sectors weather smart and climate weather ready and climate smart and so on and so forth. So these are the things which are very important. People know their importance, but still things are not happening at that rate which is needed. So one of the things which I always feel is that of course the students have taken a little bit of risk in coming up, in coming to a very interdisciplinary field, which is climate, knowing that there are certain problems in job, but at the same time, some more risk in terms of coming up with entrepreneurial ideas, startups. And if they are successful, that will generate huge number of jobs, and that will make a lot of students really interested in doing PhDs in this specific area. And in that way, maybe this, climate science will be the computer science of next decade. Who knows? The way things have happened. So I think something else is needed. The way it's happening, it's great, but something extra that is needed, maybe in terms of climate entrepreneurship. That's what I feel, and this is what I have been telling to my students, in the sense like I'm heading climate science here. Climate studies here at IIT Bombay. So I tell the students of my academic unit that think of a different career path in terms of entrepreneurship, or in terms of something which is not a conventional way, like being a professor or just a scientist. Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree with what Subimal said, but at the same time, it's quite difficult also. Even as scientists themselves are, many times we are asked to, or we end up wearing multiple hats of, not just doing research, but also communicating it, working on the policy side, even though we are from the science background, then okay, looking at entrepreneurship and then asking your students also to do that. It's an ideal thing, but I think maybe we need to have those training frameworks also to do that while we are having those PhD courseworks and so on. I think that's important as well. Yeah, and talking about citations, I think it's important to understand that these days when we are recruiting or we need scientists or academic faculty, we need people who have in-depth understanding of in particular research area or how particular skills. So even one research paper which showcases that in-depth understanding or research or technique, or one product can be more impactful than 10 or 20 papers, just for the sake of papers. So I think it's important for early careers to understand that this citation game, where to place themselves in the citation game. It is important to have that skill. So whatever number of papers you have, at the end, it's easier for someone interviewing you to understand what kind of skill you have exactly. So it's important to develop that skill and understanding in key research areas that you are interested in.
I was wondering if I could just maybe share a bit of my experience in terms of moving into sort of science and research management. So my actual background is I'm a physical oceanographer. My PhD was in thermohaline adjustment. But then I've moved into that kind of research management area, coordinating European projects, and then on national and international levels, sort of observation programs, but also climate projections, impacts, and also supporting policy. So for example, I worked in Ireland, and because it's a small country, when I was there, I would be working directly with, say, mussel farmers on how their industry may change in the future with things like algal blooms changing under a sort of warming ocean, but then also directly writing climate policy for the Irish government. So there is these sort of almost jobs where you have the science knowledge, but you're not doing the sort of full-blown research. And that is an area that there's probably now quite a lot of jobs. There's also people who are in funding agencies, who are program managers, who equally need the science background, but are not doing the research themselves. So that is another area. If people are interested in maybe not being full on in the research, but still being involved in it. And obviously in my current role, I see all the CMIP science going on, and we're quite involved. So it's great to be in that kind of position in between different communities.
Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing your experiences and advice. I think for all of us who are PhD students or early career researchers, I think we all can take something away from this. Just being conscious of the time, I just wanted to ask our panelists one more thing. If you had any piece of advice or takeaway messages for ECRs and the audience. So maybe Michael, start with you. Just a small piece of advice.
Sure. I think this touches on a few people have said, but confidence is great, and just getting involved. And confidence is kind of learned in a way. Like, you just make sure you ask a question at a seminar. Make sure you just go and meet someone. Make sure you kind of follow up on something. Just build your confidence up. No one has confidence straight away, and that means you can meet more people. You can expand your horizons and what makes more possible. So that would be great. And don't go in networking like you're networking, if you know what I mean. Just be interested and just be kind of a friendly person who's interested in what people have to say, and you'll learn a lot. I guess that kind of attitude is something I think can be really helpful.
Thank you, and maybe we'll go to Roxy.
Yeah, so I think being in touch with communities like this, just participating in panel discussions like this is quite useful as you would see. I would like to, I have a nomination form for the IPCC thing that is in hand with me. I can maybe take a few seconds to share that just to show that, so that can you see this form?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. So this is just one-page form which asks for your personal details, including your name and degree attained and so on, if you have previous IPCC experience and so on. So IPCC generally need diverse experience. So they want people who had experience in IPCC assessments, as well as people who had no experience as well. So this is where early careers fit in very well. They ask for your Google Scholar link and main expertise. So you can give keywords on what your expertise is. And then you can select a couple of chapters. So this is for AR7 nomination. So there are like 10 chapters in AR7. This is for the working group 1 on the physical basis. There is working group 2 on impacts and working group 3 on mitigation. Yeah. So you can see the different chapters, and you can also select the role at which you can, so many times, maybe if you're not senior enough, you may not get a chance as a coordinating lead author, but sometimes a lead author, but you can also be a review editor. Yeah. But other than a review editor, there is also a chance as a reviewer. After the reports are, in their draft stage, IPCC opens the reports for public comments. That's where you can, act as a reviewer, expert reviewer. So there also early careers can register and contribute to this. And you have a column for most relevant publications. Yeah. So just to give you an idea about the nomination form, so that you can, you can keep that in your mind when you work on your research or highlight your research or work with the community. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, and just for us to all sort of visually see that nomination form. We'll go Subimal and then Camille, just sort of final thoughts or a piece of advice.
Thanks. I think nothing more to add what Michael and Roxy has said. So one of the things which we have not said in this panel is that we didn't talk much about the CMIP part. So and I'd like to mention, because I think we should mention this, that CMIP has done a wonderful job over the last 2 decades. And what they have done is that they have standardized the global climate model experiments. They have made all the data available, and that has actually democratized climate research. And this is one of the greatest contribution by CMIP community to climate science. And with that, for example, there are scientists, there are institutions who do not have very good computing access, but still they can download the data, they can do impact assessment, they can understand many of the processes and and the changing processes with global warming. So this is one of the greatest thing I feel. And now what is happening is, the machine learning and data science is coming in a big way, and probably CMIP 7 will have many of the machine learning component, etc., or maybe some sort of things like neural GCMs and so on. So this is further democratizing, and that also shows that you don't have to be, may not need to have, every institute should not have a high performance computing facility, but still they can produce good climate data, do a good research and so on. So I think things are changing fast, but at the same time, CMIP has been doing wonderful job, and my sincere thanks on behalf of everyone from the climate science community. My sincere thanks to CMIP for their wonderful contribution.
Totally.
I guess I can go quickly. Michael actually stole exactly what I was going to say. So I'll just say one more thing. I think for PhD students now and ECRs, it's really uncertain times. So please look after your mental health. I think this is a very unique part of history that we're going through now with all the things that are going on in the world. And of course, we touched on career pathways just being difficult, but there are opportunities out there. So look after your mental health. And there are many wonderful people, such as those people on this call, that can always reach out to. That's what I would say. So thank you so much again for this wonderful experience on this panel.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. And thank you so much for all your inputs, for your advices, and for all the answers to your amazing questions. And a special thanks to Anna as well for moderating this amazing panel. And with that, I think we can bring this panel to a close, and I can hand it over to Eleanor to take things forward.